Hey, Wayne, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Greg. How are you?
Good. Hey, thanks for joining me today. I'm going to throw up my Civil Conversations screen from our website. We have the Civil Conversations Project. We've really enjoyed working with you on. We call it our Storyteller series. My name's Greg Olson, CEO of GROWL Agency. And part of this, Wayne, is we're continuing the conversation about racism in the US. And we're very lucky to have you as the host of this and gotten to know you through the Civil Conversations Project. So I thought, what we do on this episode is we just take a little time to update our viewers and listeners about, what's happening with Civil Conversations. And maybe we start first with what Civil Conversations is, and then we'll go through and kind of recap the last few episodes we've had that people can still watch on our website. And then we'll talk a little bit about this next upcoming episode that we have that we're with a couple of wonderful ladies. But first, Wayne, I got to tell you, I like that coffee mug there that you have. Is that a holiday coffee mug? I wasn't quite sure what to cover that. What do you have on the front of that there? Is it a teddy
It's,
bear?
um, it's actually maybe it's a whiskey mug. You don't know.
I don't know, Wayne, but
It's, it's
a
a holiday mug.
little bit. I'm just drinking the pilot coffee, but I guess it looks like a holiday mug. It's a little early, I think, but I'll let you have it.
I'm getting ready.
Okay. Hey, Wayne, why don't you give us an update for people that might have not don't know what Civil Conversations is? Um, what do you want to tell them about this?
Sure, good enough. Thanks, Greg. Well, so it's a project that we're uh, been ongoing for 3 years, kind of in collaboration with a Western-oriented magazine called High Country News, and the goal was to um, to take steps towards um, racial justice, which I'd like to find some way to say racial justice is justice for everybody because it impacts so much in this country.
Yeah.
But a mission statement is to change the false narrative that America tells itself uh, about race. Um, the analogy that I use, pretty often these days is when you were in school. Um, so we have this narrative about who we are as a country, and race is kind of woven into that. And so one of the examples that I use all the time, and I'll probably have to find a new one soon, is when you were in school, which did you learn about first? Did you learn about um, George Washington's integrity and honesty in chopping down that cherry tree with his little tiny hatchet, um, which kind of foreshadowed, the great man that he'd become? Or would you learn or the more disturbing truth that he and Martha owned 300 slaves? I think that most of us
Yeah.
learned about cherry tree really young. We thought, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And hey, can I have a hatchet? And then years later, we learned that the father of our country owned slaves. I don't say that to say George Washington was a bad person. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that we have a narrative that we promote all the time about how great and equitable and fair and freedom oriented our founding was, and our founding fathers, and uh, and it's that's not necessarily totally accurate. And then the whole things about slavery, which is the descendant of slavery is racism that's systemic, deeply embedded racism that still exists today. That we don't talk so much about. So civil conversations, Greg, by ferreting out stories and writing about them, or podcasting them, or filming them, um, finding these stories that can tie, um, clear racism of the past, kind of show how that still affects, um, the situation of America, I'd say, not just Black America today. I don't know if that's kind of a long explanation. That make any sense to you?
No, Wayne, that makes a lot of sense. And this is exactly what we've been talking about on our show. And I wanted you to kind of bring that up and remind our listeners, new viewers, new listeners, what's happening. And, you and we talk about this, and if you have some great points, and I've learned a lot about this, and you're exactly right. I learned about George Washington cherry tree, and I had a little hatchet when I was a young man, and we didn't really talk much about racism in school, and much until later, and things like that. So, we have been planting tiny seeds to help people want to reach out and learn. And so, through partnering with you on Civil Conversations, we have a lot of we bring on different speakers, and we'll continue to do that every month. And we also have a lot of resources that you and your experts have supplied that people can dig in and learn, versus it's just Greg and Wayne trying to tell people to listen to what we have to say. So when I thought we'd go back, I want to bring up some of these past episodes that we've had, because they've been really wonderful, and we've had some really great speakers. And I know we have you'll continue to bring on speakers. I know you have people that are really interested in coming on the show all across the country. But last month we talked about the Confederate Monuments with Dr. Dwight Picaisley. And that was a fascinating episode to me. One of the things that I kind of remember from that was the density of Confederate monuments directly correlates to the lynchings of Black people following the Civil War. And that was real interesting to me, right? That we have these Confederate monuments on public lands, I guess, or government lands, correct? And different town squares and things like that. So I don't know if you have a point on that one that you want to bring up quickly for our viewers. You can go back and watch it. We have infographics and data and Dwight was a great speaker on that
one. Greg, I think that what I'd probably say is that, that whole thing that you're talking about, the monuments, that kind of folds into, the false narrative that we tell ourselves about so many things. The hard part of advancing, justice for Americans is that over the centuries we've done such a good job, just a stellar job presenting the false narrative that it's what's in people's, it's just embedded in their DNA, right?
Yeah.
So if we went back to the Civil War, all kinds of studies and statistics show that majority of Americans and the majority of teachers who are teaching Americans teach that the war was about states' rights, and then tariffs and a few other things. And then somewhere kind of low on the list is slavery, right? So we have that kind of, just that kind of narrative going on, and we've had it going on for so long that the question is or the solution to Black lives in this matter is often presented as, well, just pick yourself up by the bootstraps. This is America, and everybody has equal opportunity, and that's not true. And so the whole purpose of Civil Conversations is to kind of start with pretty low expectations. All we try to do is plant a seed so that people, and we hope that, then we just hope it will germinate, so that people can, understand where we truly are in race relations, and the obstacles to achieving, all the greatness that our, founding fathers talked about, and that we, as a country, that we still promote to the world. Maybe like George Floyd's been in the news for a long time now, and when George Floyd was born in 1973, his family, his parents, and his ancestors, going back to his great grandfather, who was freed from slavery, they've been toiling in the jobs that were available to them for over 100 years, 100 years. and they had amassed and acquired nothing, no wealth at all, no home ownership, all because of like the home ownership was because of government policies that didn't encourage discrimination, government policies that required discrimination in housing. And so now, most Americans get their wealth from the homes. And so now after, generations of difficulty achieving home ownership that still happens today, believe it or not, but with predatory banking practices that every year banks get fined millions of dollars. So now we're in a situation today where black home ownership, again, the vehicle to wealth is compared to white home ownership. There's a greater gap now than in 1968 when the Fair Housing Act was passed. Now, because of lack of home ownership, families like George Floyd's have 1/10 of the wealth of the average white family. 1/10.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then people say, well, hell, just pick yourself up by the bootstraps. Stop being irresponsible. Stop being criminals. There was a few years ago now, and it must have been on NPR. Some wealthy white guy was proselytizing about what black students ought to do to get ahead, and his idea was, well, when you leave school, go to the library, and study, and then go home and get your laptop and study. Yeah, except for the kids who have to get right home to take care of their younger brothers and sisters because their father's in jail. That's a whole nother issue, right? And the mother's making $9 an hour as domestic, and she can't afford to have somebody in her home. So they go right home. But they don't go right home because taking the direct route home might mean going through, literally risking their health and their lives by walking through the neighborhood of a neighborhood gang. So they find alternate routes.
Well, they don't have, well, we all know they don't have Wi-Fi broadband like most people. Most other like white people. We've had this discussion. Their data points. They don't have computers, Chromebooks available to them, especially in these poor communities throughout America. There's an issue there too, right? So it isn't so much go to the library and then try to get home. I agree with you. These bus routes. If they went to the library, well, it still might take them 2 or 3 hours on a bus to get home safely. And I think that's what we're seeing. So this is the things I've learned over time, and it is a struggle, right? So that there's a realness behind here. And one of the things I thought I kind of like maybe joke with you a little bit that our show would be called "You Don't Have a Clue," right? I think that's really, I didn't, right? You don't, you're nice to me about it because I didn't know all these things, that's happening, right? I'm in my own little bubble, and you and I talk a lot about these things on air, off air, things like that. And I think it should be called "You Don't Have a Clue," right? And I think people just don't, and not because they don't want to, they just don't. It is the false narrative, and I think this show will help that.
To say that you and others don't have a clue, saying that to me, in my ears, it sounds insulting. I've heard, Greg, you say that that you were embarrassed that you didn't know more. But you shouldn't be embarrassed or guilty or anything else because you did a good job learning what you were taught.
Yeah, but I didn't have a clue, is what I'm saying. Right now that I learned, I feel that way, and it's insulting to me in a way. I'm not. It's just I should have known. I feel like you should know better. But this is the point where we have to, and I bring this up because you and I will banter forever, and our listeners will just drop off because you and I are going to have whiskey, coffee, gin, and people will just stop listening to us. But I think the point is we planting seeds together, and that's why I think you and I together. Here I am as a student, kind of on this podcast, with you, right? And it's a kind of a journey that we take, and it's not so much. And you and I have had these discussions where you might say, I think that's incorrect, and here's why, right? And so you and I have that discussion back and forth. And I'm just bringing that up because I think it's important for people to be open-minded and understand and willing to learn. And you're a very open-minded man also, but you're planting that seed. Yeah, in most point.
I
So,
mean, if any of my friends are watching, they just went, what?
well,
Wayne?
he's open-minded. So, hey, I don't want to repeat. I want to make sure we don't lose too many in a short time, because the plant the seed part is to get people to go back, watch some of these, or read a little bit. We did have Bill Gwaltney on. Do you want to say a little bit about Bill and Dwight? Just can you give me a quick snapshot of these two fine gentlemen who have just at any notice they're on a show listening?
Yeah, they were good people to have on. Bill had a long and eventually long career with the Park Service, and eventually a very high level position. He helped design the African American Museum and the Smithsonian Museum on the Mall, and a number of other significant events. And he has, I don't know if I'd say devoted, but he has spent much of his adult life trying to promote racial justice. Dwight Picathely, as it happens, also another Park Service person, was chief historian for the Park Service for 30 years. And he talks, knowledgeably and eloquently about the whole statue issue. But Greg, what I want to kind of get in here a little bit about civil conversations and about racial justice is, in my mind, there's an entrance hurdle that has to be overcome before racial justice can proliferate more than it has. And that entrance hurdle is that so many people think that it's already happened, right? That again, as I go back to do is pull yourself up by the bootstraps. This is America. Rich or poor has nothing to do with skin color. It only has to do with how hard you work. And we're trying to break through that myth so that people not so they have understanding and sympathy, but so that they're open to racial justice and not kind of maybe subtly fight against it. Maybe an example might be that up the road from where I live in Western Colorado is Aspen, Colorado, in the Aspen Valley, which is a number of towns. The whole valley prides himself on being liberal, right? And they're very liberal right up to the point of affordable housing, mostly for the Hispanics that clean the homes and sell them food at City Market. Very liberal, but they fought tooth and nail and with complete success of not allowing low income or affordable housing in their valley. That's a problem, and it kind of says to me that there's a belief that why should we provide affordable housing? Just work harder. This is America, and you can make it. You can buy a house in Aspen if you work hard enough. I've worked pretty hard, and I can't afford a house in Aspen.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
These are great points. One of the things that I'm just looking back to some notes I have taken over time. In all this about this false narrative and everything that we're talking about, like how slavery died, but racism was given a new life, and that was something I really learned from listening to these episodes, with the conversations you've been having with people like Bill and Dwight, and other members that might call in and be part of this. So those are just kind of quick learnings that I don't think many of us really think about from there, right? A lot of times we thought slavery ended, and that was a bad thing, and then all of a sudden it really didn't. I mean, in your words, it's kind of the thing. I think that was a quote from you, but racism was given a new life. So I would ask our listeners and that to go and watch these episodes and to listen. But talking about different privileges and things like that, we do have a couple of upcoming speakers that I'm really excited to have them on the show, with Vanessa and Nancy. I mean, we're going to be talking exactly what you've been talking about, what's happening in these cities. We're talking about things exactly like how do we break the things like if you work hard, you can be successful, right? Just exactly what you've been talking about, and the challenges that African American, and we're talking a lot about youth with them, but people of color and things like that have, and there's a lot of obstacles. I don't know if if you just want to talk quickly about, these two fine ladies who are going to be on the show, that we're going to have a recording I'm going to post here shortly.
Yeah, sure. I mean, they both had interesting experiences. I worked with Nancy Roth decades ago in IBM in Connecticut, and she retired, I think, about the same time I did, maybe 2010 or something like that. And she got involved in creating a nonprofit called Future 5 that serves underprivileged youth in the Stamford, Connecticut area. And so she came into this with an awareness of people who are underprivileged and marginalized, need some help. So she had some awareness, and that's great. But in the course of working with these kids, she was really just blown away at the large stack of obstacles that we would just never think about, that these kids have to overcome to make it through high school, just to make it through high school and to go on to college. So she's going to be on to talk about her awakening. And so along a very similar line, a woman I worked with in the Park Service years ago, it is kind of a similar experience. She grew up and lived in South Philly. She got a degree in art and went into the inner city of Northeast Philly to teach art, right? And she went in with kind of two beliefs. There are rich people and there are poor people, and it has nothing to do with skin color. And she went in with the American belief of meritocracy, that if that anybody who works hard, you get born, you grow up, you work hard, and you're successful, or you don't work hard and you're not successful. And she had those beliefs dramatically challenged in the inner city of Philadelphia. And she's going to talk about those things.
Yeah.
So
Good.
whatever.
I'm excited to have, I love the storytelling part of it and the conversations that we've had to have with both these ladies. I think they're really going to help, give some really perfect examples to everything that we're talking about here. Well, Wayne, I don't want to keep our listeners too much. A big thing I wanted to have is kind of what's happening in your world. I think we have a lot of seeds to keep planting, and we ask our listeners to, be involved in that. What else are you looking for in civil conversations, or is there ways that people can get involved, or kind of moving things forward? We do get asked that quite a lot. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Other than financial support, we don't really ask people to get involved with civil conversations at this point.
Yeah.
We do ask them, of course, to pay attention, to read and watch and listen. And my most recent newsletter, which will probably go out this afternoon or tomorrow, I've had a lot of people say, well, gee, what can I do about this whole, we're in this historic movement. What can I do? And kind of poignantly, I had, in the last few weeks, I've had two, senior gentlemen of means say a very similar thing to me, which was, I'm used to getting my way. I'm used to having, an impact and influence, and I have no idea what to do about this movement that's happening across the country right now. So, I tried to give that a ton of thought, and try to help people move. So we'll probably cover that instead of right now, Greg, maybe in a near term upcoming seminar. But yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I'm gonna kind of deflect that question.
Oh, that's good. I mean, we get asked, and I think there's ways we're going to have, you're going to be launching, whether it's a campaigns or things like that. So I figure it's a question that comes in. And we'll,
You know, I mean, the bottom line to me, the bottom line to me, and it's what civil conversation is trying to do, is educate people. So I mean, if I was going to say one thing, I would say get educated. A way to do that is through civil conversations, and there are many ways to do that. You know, listen, um, get educated, and then when that happens, then people are going to have the opportunity to figure out for themselves what their path is, because the path is different for everybody. Certainly not everybody's going to do what I'm doing, and I wouldn't even recommend it because it's time consuming, pain in the butt. But you know, there's ways for anybody uh, to make a difference. You know, John Kennedy once said that not every person can make a difference. Actually said not every man, but that was in the 60s, right?
yeah.
He said not every person can make a difference, but every person can try. So that might be the bottom line here. You know,
Yeah, and I
yeah.
think I'll put it out. We have growlagency.com/connects. We have our Civil Conversations project. You can join the conversation here on the website. That gets it connected to all the shows that Wayne is doing. We are, again, just the guide, having this conversation with different leaders every month. And we'll continue to post content as we move forward, and we'll continue to update our viewers and listeners as we go forward. So, and, you know, with that, Wayne, thank you very much for your time. I look forward to the next conversation with you and seeing you soon.
Hey, thanks, Greg. You take care, man.